Today it's just me, Regulus. Ferris is out. It's too late at night for him over in Indonesia. So today we have Janet with us again, and we have Joshua. You guys met Janet before last time. Joshua, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what a little bit about the subject you wanted to talk about, enlightenment and ascension?
Well, good evening, one and all. I am Joshua Levy. That's not the professional name I will be using, but it's what we're starting with, so we're just going to roll with it. And I'm just a 40-year-old person. I was in the United States Navy. I was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. And I've just been through a very large spectrum of life. I began as pretty sheltered and homeschooled, and I was raised a fundamentalist Christian and was very conservative. And then I joined the military and got out into the real world. And well, let's just say I took a hard left turn into esotericism and also leftist politics, and I've just been kept going deeper and deeper in that direction ever since. And the main thing that turned me away from fundamentalism was the awakening of my heart. It's like in the Christian culture, they kind of teach you that, there's God's chosen, the elect, and everyone else belongs to the devil, But when you go through life and death with other people, even though they're debaucherous sinners, you also see that they also have hearts and souls. They also have people that love them. You will die for them, they would die for you. And I don't think any creator would throw those people in hell just because they like drinking and fucking around. So that really made me question things. So awakening to my empathy really detached me from traditional religion, and that journey has just been going ever on since. Just kind of, the ever increasing spiral of empathy. I eventually awoke to global politics, mainly when Bernie ran in 2016. But I was always aware of politics before then, but I didn't participate until Bernie ran. And then I realized, like, oh, they keep calling him all these names. They keep calling him a socialist and a communist. So I was like, what are these things? And it's like, oh, there's this thing called, class consciousness, and this that there's a working class that 99% of people belong to, and there's an owner class that kind of has all the money and all the power, and they kind of rig the system for their interests and stuff. So it's like, wow, you just kind of start getting into these things, and well, it's a never-ending journey. Here I am. But the subject of enlightenment, I say for the common person, it just begins that you begin with turning on your awareness, and that creates the space. I call it radiant spaciousness. That creates the space for empathy. That you can look at your own circumstances and you can look at others and not be swept up in them, because you can stand back and be the witness. It kind of creates some room to breathe, some room to not panic, some room to say, yes, you still feel your pains. You can be wounded and hurt and go through bad times. But because you have that space, you can also observe yourself and think, in all of history, how many other people have also gone through this? Or also you can question things like, oh, what is the other person feeling? What are they thinking? And it really it gives you room to be compassionate. It gives you room to make choices other than reactionary. Because for a lot of people, when you get hurt, you get shitty. It's like, oh shit, I'm wounded. You did me wrong, so I'm going to do you wrong. But when you turn on your awareness, it creates the space that you can choose something different. And that's step one of the path towards enlightenment.
I want to add to that because, I literally earlier today, our old friend Janet?
I do.
She was sending me inappropriate pictures, right? I'm not going to go into deeper than that. And she found a guy she said she liked. So I said, we're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to send me pictures. This is done. You have somebody that you're with, right? And then later that night, she sent me more inappropriate pictures, and I called her out. I was like, no, this is wrong. I don't care. You know what I mean? That we had that moment of whatever. You're with somebody now, so you need to respect that boundary. And she was like trying to say she sent those to a whole list of people. And like, I was like, that's wrong. You need
Doesn't
to
make it better.
you need to fucking
Yeah.
you need to get your shit together and fucking treat this man with respect. I understand, like, she did just get out of a marriage and like she wants to hoe around and shit, and I get it, but I'm like, you literally said to me you can't send me that stuff because you're in a relationship, and then you went back on your own word literally that same night and did it anyways. So I called her out and was like, if you want to be my friend, if you want to fucking, excuse my language, if you want to be here as a friend with me, you have to respect your own words and stay true to yourself. You know what I mean? Instead of me getting upset and holding her to an account where I make it into a problem for her, like, or I like make it like an issue out of it, I basically said you have to grow your inside of yourself in order for me to allow you around me, right? Like, and I think
Turn
that's
on your
kind of what
awareness.
enlightenment
Remember your
is,
word.
right?
You reflected to her. It's like, hey, remember your own consistency. Remember your own self. Be aware of what you're doing. Don't just subconsciously. It's like, I need attention. I need validation, and not really know what you're doing.
I mean, that's exactly it. As a woman, it's that validation. A lot of times we just, like a thirst trap. We crave attention. It's just what we do. But I also have to like comment on something. Humans have a tendency to contradict themselves. As soon as they say, "Oh, I don't do that," chances are they're going to do it again. You know what I mean? Like it's I don't know. And I can't speak to her experience, and I don't know what was going through her head when she contradicted herself. Maybe she thought she was breaking up with her guy. I don't know.
Well,
But at the same time, I know that I've done that as well. It's like I say one thing like, "Oh, I'm never going to eat that food again." What are you having for dinner? I'm having that thing that I said I would never eat again.
So she has told me after the fact that the guy and her talked and she's allowed to be shared, I guess. So there is the boundary there that like made it okay. But I set the boundary for myself and her as a friendship that she shouldn't treat me that way specifically. So it was more so like I'm the one who put the boundary there, and then she refused to respect the boundary I set. Right. And then I brought her back up to her own standard of how she was supposed to treat me that she agreed with me on to begin with. Right. That's
She's trying to
self-respect.
farm simps, but you ain't no
Yeah,
simp. So she needs
exactly.
to check herself before she wrecks herself.
Simp farming. I love it. I've never heard that before.
I mean,
She's collect.
that's what OnlyFans is, right? All these women collecting simps.
Well, I'll be honest. If I was born blessed as a feminine female, I would do the same fucking thing. But I'm not. So I will keep my hairy, bulbous body to myself.
So
Yeah.
on the topic of ascension, what do you think? Do you think there's like anything more beyond just the natural progression of aging throughout our lives that adds and contributes to the process of soul and spiritual growth other than just simply learning through our natural experiences? Can we go out and seek wisdom in a way that will further our own spiritual growth in a great way? What do you think?
Well, I think it's quite obvious that, it's like a person like me. I was raised in a very neglectful parenting style. I was left to my own devices, incredible amounts of sleep and solitude. So if a person is a result of the stimulus that they receive and the experiences they have, I should be a veal. I should have zero IQ. I shouldn't know anything. But I've always been able to stream almost unlimited amounts of awareness and intelligence through osmosis or channeling or whatever things. I mean, I would use words I've never read. I would know things that I've never been taught. It's just there's this. I have access to something, and then I came across a little saying that apparently Nikola Tesla said back in the day that intelligence. It's a source out in the universe that you tune into. It's not yours. It's something that you can bring down through you and in my own personal cosmology through your open heart, I consider the heart kind of a gateway that you can tune into infinite sources, of which intellect is merely one of them. And yeah, so obviously, I am not a result of. Go for it.
Yeah. So you touched on something, and I want to back this up. Like, I was listening. I love like hearing people talk about creativity and the source of their creativity. And one time I made a song and I played it for this guy. He's kind of like an older hippie guy, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't even remember writing it. Maybe there was some marijuana involved or something." I said, "I don't even remember writing it," and he just looks at me and he says, "That's because you didn't. You channeled this. That's what you do." And I'm like, "Okay." But then later on, I was listening to a podcast. I think it was like a Malcolm Gladwell podcast, and I love him. And he was interviewing like creatives and like talking about the source of genius. And think about the etymology of the word genius. It's derived from the word genie. And they used to say back in the day, they don't say you are a genius. They'd say you have a genius, because
Damon.
it's a temporary thing. You know what I mean? Genius is fleeting. You can be on top of your game one moment, and then the next day you're kind of like a numbskull, at least for me personally. So when I have strokes of genius, and I'm not saying well, let's not talk about the IQ part, but just when I have great ideas, if I don't act on them, I know I might not remember the idea later. So I have experienced these states of genius, and
So
it's not a permanent state.
for what I know, what I've experienced is what you're describing is kind of like a state of transcendental meditation where you get into a flow state of consciousness where like you're in the zone basically, and what they mean by channeling, I think, is that you're in a state of gnosis where you're allowing yourself to express yourself authentically without having to think about who you are. You're just being yourself, and what you're putting out is your true self, and what your energy you possess. You're reciprocating with the universe without creating like greater layers of noise through interaction with your surroundings. You're literally just accepting your place in the world and then putting that energy back out through like osmosis.
Think about the word gnosis. Think about the etymology and the origin of that word. It just means unknown knowledge or hidden knowledge or just knowledge.
Yeah.
So it's like inadvertently being a creature of the void and solitude and loneliness, I became an accidental, esoteric adept, just gifted with direct gnosis and radiant awareness and an open heart and all that good shit, that you're supposed to be striving toward. And I had many years where I considered myself a seeker, but and here's where my pride starts popping up. No matter what church I went to or what tradition I learned from or what book I read, it's like, yeah, that's nice, but there's greater wisdom flowing right here. It's alive, the spirit of wisdom I will send unto you. And it's chirping, motherfuckers. It's like, I could out preach the preachers, out guru the gurus, out magic magicians. But no one would truly recognize me for what I am, because I am here before you, flowing from those things directly, while everyone else is kind of playing the theater of like, oh, this is my lineage, this is my tradition, I learned at the feet of this is my culture, I spent 30 years in the mountains. They're creating mythos and culture, and it kind of creates this social spiral where if certain people buy into you, other people will buy into you, and it creates this complex where it has nothing to, it's kind of like a form of celebrity. It's not that these people are spiritual masters, but significant people of status bought into them, and it just keeps their mythology just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I
and it's
relate.
like, I'm wiser than these fucks, but they're famous, so it's like, whatever, man.
what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that people create systems that aren't necessarily based on like factual processes or like objective patterns in humanity. Rather, they are creating their own artificial stories and belief systems in order to generate a like what's it, a cure for a symptom, or to make it appear like they know what they're talking about, but in reality, they're just funneling people through things that aren't actually going to help them, and as a way to gain personal traction and wealth in their own personal lives, rather than actually
That's it.
putting out
That's it.
something that's meaningful.
And what
It's
breaks my heart is those type of people always steer things back towards capitalism, and that's what broke my heart. I was big into the New Age scene and spirituality of all types, but they have courses to sell, retreats to sell. There's this gateway of money, and it broke my heart because I've been pretty fucking poor my whole life. So it's like, here I am, directly connected to the sources of all these things, but like, oh, sorry, buddy, you can't join the crowd because you ain't got no money. And it's like, what kind of spiritual system is that?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like Buddha denounced all his wealth, all his, like, he was a prince, he was a king, he just said, I don't want this. And that was his path. That was the beginning of the path to enlightenment for him. Also, my theory about the origins of a lot of religion, especially like the Abrahamic religions, like they all touch the same source, the source that you've touched, the source that I'd like to think I've touched, but maybe. So the problem occurs when we try to write it down and we try to bring other people along. Like, if everyone was given the opportunity to experience that themselves, we would see that we don't need, it's not a pay to play system. It's about your heart and your soul, and these gatekeepers of knowledge and information, and they're just selling you their way. You can find your own way.
The Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. The Tao that can be named is the Tao in the moment. It's the Tao that's right now, and that may be functional for sharing with each other to relate information in this present moment, and whenever anybody listens to this and hears it in their present moment. But in the actual future, past that first moment of hearing it, it may no longer be the eternal Tao for us. It's only when it remains unnamed and it's unmanifested knowledge that we just keep inside of our brains that it becomes the eternal Tao for us. That's what I've learned through my personal practice and my belief system, is that when we share our ideas, they become corruptible by nature itself. They lose the ability to be consistent patterns. Like, writing something down it has less of that effect, but once you speak it and it's heard by another person, those concepts and ideas can be broken down through another person's logic. They can process those ideas into their own system. They can create their own beliefs based off of the ideas that are shared with them. And I think that it makes sense to give somebody some money for the ability to create our own ideas off of theirs. But I think that it should be a tip system and not like they charge some set amount for their practice. I mean, personally, if I was going to lead a spiritual system, I would not charge somebody a set amount. I would look at them based off of their need. I would say, are you a poor person, and where are you at in life? How can I help you? And then give them what I can. But if they're like a really rich person who like has the ability to give me that money, I would charge them a lot more.
Pay up, bitch.
It just it would make sense, like it's not based on like their like lack of need. It's based on their ability to give. I think that that's what matters in these types of systems, is like, that's the reason the Catholic Church got so big, is because their morals that they taught their people that went to their church helped them expand their monetary value in society. And then as a result, they gave back that value to the church that taught them those behaviors, right? Like, even if there was a lot of negativity that went on inside of those systems, overall, they were doing a lot of good for a lot of people in that process. And we can sit here, we can like split hairs and argue about all the bad things that these systems have done, but at the end of the day, they have progressed society in large ways.
Like if you take, for example, homeless shelters, like a lot of those are run by different churches. I don't know. I don't have a statistic for that. I just know that when I was doing news reporting, every time I'd go to a homeless shelter or some other kind of charitable organization, it's usually backed by some religious institution.
I can confirm the multiple times I was homeless, it was the churches that ran the programs and made you sit through sermons before they gave you the food. But hey, whatever, you got to do what you got to do, you know. But yeah, the whole path is intensely personal, and one of the things that the wisdom flows says is that someone else's liberation will not save you. You know, they might work for them, they might be charismatic, they might be admirable, they might be, you know, praiseworthy, but it's not going to save you. You can only save yourself. You have to connect to these things within yourself. You have to develop your own strength and power in order to, you know, remain, to keep those, to form an eternal thread between lifetimes that accumulates and builds. You know, otherwise you just kind of, if you're a creature of grace and you don't develop your own strength, well, you're going to get erased between lives. You're going to get devoured by some other entity when you leave your body. You're going to be at the mercy of fate. But if you develop your own strength and power, you can, all those things that come to feast when you die, you can tell them to fuck right off, including the visions of the patriarchal gods and whatever other things we were taught is deity. You can look them in the face and say, fucking kneel, bitch, and they will fucking crumble because you developed your own power.
Yeah, I agree on what you said, in the sense that we should not put any other man at any point in history upon a pedestal and worship them as a false idol. Nature, or the accumulation of our experiences, or the energy that we feel in the universe, the intelligence that exists in the universe, whatever it is that you want to call it, as a deity, as the higher power for you. I honestly believe that we should all have our own direct relationship with that entity, whatever it is for us. And we should not put any human that has ever lived on a pedestal. We should not worship any other man as a prophet, period. We should all be our own prophets for these entities, that we have a direct relationship with ourselves. And
I love that kind of thinking is so powerful. And even Jesus in the Gnostic Gospels said, the kingdom of God is within you. Like, don't go to church. It's inside you. It's in your heart. But be a good person. Don't hurt people. Don't follow the 10 Commandments if that's your thing. Just don't fuck up. You don't have to give these people money.
Yeah, right. Honestly, I almost feel like just us talking about this is going to get this episode canceled, like, in media, because we're so far against the public acceptable measure. But at the end of the day, this is legitimately truth. This is the way it is. This is, like, if Jesus was here right now, I honestly believe he would be like over our shoulders, like, these guys are talking about the truth. This is the way my followers should act. You know what I mean? Like, instead of worshiping,
I don't think we're going to get canceled. I don't think this. I think there's a lot of people that are coming to grips with this kind of information and coming to an understanding that even if they are Christian, the church is flawed. Even if they are Buddhist, there's Buddhist monks that kill people. People are fucked up. People are fucked up, and people ultimately run the church. So any institution run by humans is going to be kind of fucked up.
Well, don't get me started on Jesus, because for me, he came. There's like two things he said that really resonate with me. It's like, of course, I will send the spirit of truth unto you and spirit of wisdom unto you. But the second thing is, you will do what I have done and more. You will do these things and more. That means that he came to show us how to overcome death. He came to show us how to heal the sick, heal ourselves, provide the material sustenance we need to live, independent of who owns the land or whatever, all this other stuff. You will do what he did and more. He did not come to say, I am the only one, and blah. He kind of said, no one gets to the Father but through me. But if you kind of look deeper, no one gets to the source except through those who are connected to the source. But when you connect to the source, it now includes you. So when people exalt Jesus or anyone and then they lower themselves, it's like, that's not what Jesus wanted. He didn't want you to lift him up and then lower yourself and you're just going to be a lamb at his feet till the end of time. No, he wants you to rise up. He went allegedly into hell and liberated everyone that was trapped there because he wants you to join the family. He didn't say, "Oh, I liberated everyone now. If you touch yourself, I'm going to throw you back in there." There was no caveat. He liberated the people that were trapped there because he's a being of grace. And he doesn't, I imagine, want to be alone. He wants to make the family big. And the people that just threaten each other with like, "Oh, you better do what I say and you better respect this and that, or you're going to be over here." It's like, that ain't Jesus. That's you, motherfucker. That's your little patriarchal narcissism, Leave him out of it.
I agree 100%. Like, did you know one of the thing I learned I taught myself Latin a long time ago. We're talking like 10 years ago now. I don't know the language or anything. I'm not proficient, but I do know that the subject and the object are reversed from the way we use them in English. And if you weren't aware of that, of that distinction while you were translating Latin text to English text, excuse me, like in the 15th, 16th century, it would be very easy for you to mistranslate certain lines in the Bible. For example, like Jesus turning water into wine. Wouldn't it be like if he was an alchemist, which is something we talk about, a spiritual person who knows how to convert different types of matter to other types of matter, as well as processing like the philosopher's stone inside of yourself and like creating that so you can manifest your own truth into reality, which is literally what Jesus did. That's the alchemical process of the soul. If he was an alchemist who was changing matter states, it is literally possible, the way that we know how to manipulate matter now, to distill wine into water and pure alcohol as two separate like products. It is impossible to turn water into wine, but you can turn wine into water and alcohol. So in the Bible, I very strongly believe that specific stanza was reversed in the object and subject during the original translation at whatever point, because that education of how the object and subject in Latin grammar was switched through their language difference.
Would that mean that water walked on Jesus?
I mean, if in the sense of like a baptism, perhaps, right? If you like,
I was just messing with you. I was just punching a hole in your theory.
No, I hear you. But I'm just saying, it could also be that it was done on purpose, right? If you want to control a population, then it's one of the easiest ways to do it is you flip flop logic in ways that are specifically only one way, and like they work. A plus B equals C. B plus A won't equal C because it's a timeline of like chronological events. Things like mix together, create one thing specifically. They don't. If you try to reverse the process, it doesn't create the same thing, right? That's one of the ways to control people, is through controlling their logic and then changing it with something that simple where they wouldn't like necessarily know it unless they actually had done the process themselves. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
you can easily like subvert people to your agenda through making them believe things that are false in reality, and then they look up to you as the authority force because you're the one who's telling them how reality functions, and they're too ignorant to know or to test the theory themselves.
Or they're brainwashed and they can't think for themselves, and they rely on other people for that kind of information. So.
That's basically what I said. Yeah.
Like one of the most insidious things about human culture, be it religious or secular, is a grand majority of it, in my opinion, teaches you to discount and divorce yourself from your emotions and not, think they're sinful, and people are detached from their anger and detached from their feelings. It's like, don't trust your feelings. That's not rational, this or that or the other thing, or that's how the devil gets you or whatever. But for me, as long as you have an open heart and a turned on awareness, your emotions can channel divine wisdom no matter what they are. I am often at work feeling like a piece of fucking shit, self-loathing or angry or this or that, but I control myself. I don't let it get out on others. I don't let it stain my perception. I'm just chewing on it. Just, kind of like emotional alchemy. I'm just having all these forces, just feeling them, molding them, sussing them out, and wisdom comes through it. It helps me tune in. It's fuel. It's fuel to tune into things. It's fuel to channel things. It's fuel to empower yourself. All of it is fuel, negative or positive. It is a part of you. It helps you connect with things. And that's one reason I am liberated, because I embrace my anger. I embrace my emotions, and I don't allow them to play me like a puppet. I just cultivate them and use them, and I am an engine and they are fueled. That's what I've discovered.
I love that.
Me too. That's a great description of how to like process emotions in a healthy method. Now, I think that's one thing that we see a lot of is in our lives is like, I made a post about this the other day or yesterday, and it was like, I realized that I think that my parents didn't learn how to love themselves, or at least my dad didn't. And because my dad was my role model growing up, I didn't learn how to love myself because I didn't have a good example of what self-love was. Like my dad always put the women in his life first and was like trying to please them. So I always believed that pleasing women was like what I was supposed to do in order to get like reciprocated love. But I've realized,
Mine too.
but what I've learned is that loving myself, being a whole person on my own, and being like having the self-discoveries I've made is what it makes me attractive to women specifically, or whoever I'm attracted to. That's what attracts them to me. Is not how I look. It's not what I can do for them. It's the fact that I am whole as I am now, and I can provide them with a wholesome, like loving existence in my presence. That's all it really takes to have a good like relationship with another human being, is to already be aware of who you are and what you have to give, and to be able to have good boundaries and to separate yourself from people that would wish you harm. Like if you learn how to only surround yourself with people who increase the goodness that you have to give by giving you their goodness, then that hand washing of each other's hands only grows that into a bigger world of like basically creating heaven together, right? Instead, if Jesus did come down to earth and he did teach us all these things, would not the purpose of doing so been to teach us how to live in heaven on earth, to recreate the Garden of Eden, to get back to the point before we sinned for the first time, to be able to love each other wholesomely and to connect through our soul together without the worry of these physical features separating us, without the dividing like ideologies, without the hatred that we have in each other's hearts. If we love ourselves, we have to love each other. If we love ourselves, we have to love the world. There is no ability to hate anything in a way that harms it when you love yourself. It's just a natural process. The enlightenment of love is literally the process of learning acceptance and a human identity to identify with your species, right? So how can you sit here and say, I hate myself, I hate the world, I hate the species, but I also want to have the power to make decisions for my species? How does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like, and those are the people that we have in charge. They don't love themselves. They're too busy trying to make money to give themselves value. How do we sit here and judge these people as our standard of what's right and what's successful when they're not happy? They're not satisfied. They're too busy running a rat race into the fucking pyramid scheme to try to feel like their lives were meaningful when we don't even. I work at a Walmart. You work at a grocery store. We're happy. We are enlightened. And these people are acting like they know better than us when they're the ones who are still struggling.
Well, they're high in their own supply, surrounded by yes men and luxury and subservience and dominant. You can get real far kind of satiating your primate self. So when you have dominance over others, you have power over others, it feels real fucking good, and they don't wake up from it because they don't fucking have to, But it is crazy, the depths of greed. I mean, it wouldn't take much to, sell out and buy out anyone. It's like, oh, $100,000, cool. But then there's these people that are like, they make hundreds of millions of dollars all the time, and that's not enough. They keep on selling out. They keep on selling the rest of us down the river because, like, oh, you're gonna get a few more million. It's like, when is enough enough? I mean, when are you just like, okay, I'm good now, I'm gonna do right by everyone? It's like, no, like the politicians, they just keep on doing it until they die, and it's like, wow. I mean, that's something I kind of learned. I've been married once before, and that relationship taught me that when your partner has a part of themselves that I call insatiable, that means no amount of connecting to it will resolve it. No amount of reenacting it will resolve it. Nothing can heal it. It's just going to play its program over and over and over until the person dies. If a person is inhabited by an insatiable thing, at least for me, you can't have a relationship with them. And then, of course, she went on to find someone who will replay the program over and over and over. And say, okay, bless you, find your happiness. But once I saw the root of that insatiability, she was ritually abused as a child. It's like, I can't interact with that. I can't go, oh, that's her thing, that's her kink. It's like, no. Once you see the root of it, it's like, at least in her example, it's like, no, I can't jive with that.
You recognized that it was unhealthy and you were unwilling to perpetuate it. And unfortunately, that's a toxic relationship. When someone is willing, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Now, my ex was a drug addict, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I used to like some substances, from time to time, but I saw that their need and their want was, just to use your word, insatiable. There was no getting enough. And as a result, they're dead now. They died of overdose, and left to raise my child myself. And, it's just, yeah, I mean, she was older when it happened, but still, like, the aftermath, the fallout is still affecting her. And nobody wants that. Nobody needs that. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's just like that need ultimately takes over. And no matter how much you care for this person, they're going to still pursue that. So if you try to stop them, if you don't give it to them, they'll still continue.
In all my experience, I don't know how to heal that. I mean, I guess theoretically, I've heard certain hallucinogens under certain circumstances can help heal that, but I haven't encountered anyone who has had that insatiability and was healed from it. So that's very concerning to me. I don't know the answer for that. We need to find the answer for that. I guess it's individual for each person.
No, see, there is an answer to that, and it's called lack. You have to teach somebody how to accept lack. It's not the exact opposite of insatiability is the lack of anything, the ability to exist.
Oh, actually, that's why I'm not an addictive person, because I completely accept lack. It's like, oh, I'm in solitude, I'm in whatever, I have nothing. Exactly. Cool.
we can accept being alone. We can entertain ourselves. We can, I think a lot of the time people are scared to be alone because they've never had to be alone, and they don't know how to handle it. Right? They don't know how to cope with entertaining themselves, with being stuck with their own thoughts running through their head without sharing them with somebody. Like, humans are social creatures. A lot of our natural behaviors, our subconscious habits, are distinguished through our social interactions. And when we don't get those growing up, we learn to internalize our social habits and have conversations with different voices. And I'm not saying like schizophrenic voices. I'm saying like we're arguing points from different perspectives from people that we know in order to fulfill that lack of social interaction, right?
We complete our own circuit.
And yeah, we didn't have anything might call that reasoning.
A lot of people,
you're just reasoning inside your mind.
Well, the thing about that is it's a natural adaptation to filling in that social blank that we didn't get growing up, because we now need to be able to think about how we can relate with other people in a way that is beneficial for both us and them, without having the natural habits programmed into us through the social interactions as a child, where we wouldn't have to consciously think about it. We would just be able to absorb the information naturally. And that's where the big difference comes from with a lot of people, especially introverts, right? Is that we relate with each other through words and through direct interaction and experiences rather than just being around each other, not saying much and doing things together. That's the big difference that I know of personally from introverts and extroverts, right? Is extroverts can just be in each other's company, go out and do things, and that's their way of relating. Whereas as an introvert, I feel very like I am not being fulfilled with my experiences with people unless we're doing what we're doing right now. Like, this is the depth of a relationship for me as an introvert that gives me the value of human interaction in a way that's meaningful.